The Undertaker just dropped an explosive bombshell that could destroy Hulk Hogan's legacy.
And I'm walking down the hall, just going to my locker room, and he goes, hey brother, can I talk to you? So I go into the dressing room, I put my bag off. He goes, hey, let's go back here into the shower.
The revelation centers on a shocking incident from 1991, and it's changing how fans see the so-called American hero. Let's get into it. The foundation of betrayal. Mark Calloway's arrival as The Undertaker at Survivor Series 1990 introduced a dark, supernatural figure who'd grow into the locker room's most respected leader. Meanwhile, Hulk Hogan stood as wrestling's golden goose, the face who had dragged the industry out of carnivals and into global stardom. His Hulkamania had millions hooked, making him untouchable in the company hierarchy. But under those contrasting personas were the makings of a rivalry that bled far beyond storylines. And the first spark came from what looked, on the surface, like an act of goodwill. Hogan played a role in bringing Undertaker to WWE after they met during the filming of the 1991 movie Suburban Commando. Hogan recommended the young wrestler to Vince McMahon, helping launch what would become one of the most iconic careers in wrestling history. This initial connection seemed positive, setting the foundation for what could have been a mutually beneficial professional relationship. However, the wrestling business has always been a cutthroat environment where personal ambition often collides with professional courtesy. As 1991 progressed, it became clear that the Undertaker was being positioned as a major threat to the established order, with his mysterious undead character quickly rising through the ranks and capturing the imagination of fans who were growing weary of Hogan's repetitive heroic formula. The collision course between these two wrestling giants reached its inevitable destination on November 27, 1991, at Survivor Series in Detroit, Michigan. The match was billed as the gravest challenge, and it would prove to be far more challenging than anyone could have anticipated, though not for the reasons the wrestling world expected. The match itself followed a familiar pattern of Undertaker's early career encounters. The young phenom dominated the veteran champion, showcasing his supernatural resilience and methodical offensive style. But the finish would be anything but routine, as interference from the nature boy Ric Flair would provide the catalyst for one of the most shocking upsets in wrestling history. As the match reached its climax, Flair made his way to ringside and slid a steel chair into the ring. The Undertaker seized the opportunity, positioning Hogan for his devastating finishing maneuver, the tombstone piledriver, directly onto the unforgiving steel. What happened next would be seared into the memory of everyone present and would become the foundation for decades of real-life animosity. But to understand the true significance of what occurred that night, we must first examine the meticulous preparation that preceded the match. Earlier that day, in a scene that would become legendary in wrestling lore, Hogan had arrived at the arena unusually early. In an interview, The Undertaker recalled this pivotal moment, saying,
Hogan back in the day, you know, the rest of the talent usually had to show up by 1 o'clock on a pay-per-view TV day. Hogan usually roll in around 5, do his deal. So I get there. It's at Joe Louis Arena, Detroit, Michigan. I show up there about noon, 12:30. Hogan's already there.
What followed was a conversation that would forever change how The Undertaker viewed not only Hogan, but the entire wrestling business.
And I'm walking down the hall, just going to my locker room, and he goes, hey brother, can I talk to you? So I go into the dressing room, I put my bag off. He goes, hey, let's go back here into the shower.
The choice of venue for this conversation was significant in wrestling culture. As The Undertaker explained, the shower area was where serious business was conducted. It was there that Hogan would plant the seeds of what would later be revealed as an elaborate manipulation.
He goes, hey, I'm really nervous about taking the tombstone. I got this bad neck. And I was like, Terry, I said, look, I promise you, I said, I'll take great care of you. I don't need, you don't need to worry. I'll have you. I said, just don't worry about it.
This talk built the trust Hogan would later exploit. A young Undertaker promised to protect him in the ring, a promise that would come back to haunt him in the worst way. But Hogan wasn't finished with his psychological manipulation. Throughout the day, he continued to reinforce his supposed vulnerability, creating a constant state of anxiety for his opponent.
Now, every time that I see him for the rest of the day, like, going through catering or whatnot, he gives me the old, like, don't forget what we talked about, right? He's like, he'd hold his neck and, get me, brother.
This constant reminder served to heighten The Undertaker's awareness of the supposed danger he posed to the company's biggest star. The pressure was immense, and Hogan knew exactly how to exploit it. The match itself unfolded as planned, with The Undertaker dominating the action and building toward the climactic finish. When the moment came for the tombstone piledriver on the steel chair, The Undertaker was meticulous in his execution.
When I tell you I had the man, and the man was, I've given my kids rougher bumps than I give Hogan.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I wrap him up. I've got him. The chair comes down. Boom.
But then something happened that would change everything.
Boom. I give him the tombstone. As soon as my knees hit, I hear, oh. You got me, brother.
My neck and my back.
In that instant, The Undertaker's world came crashing down.
I am much like, how, I'm like, you have all these, like, I was 24, 25 years old, and, I just crushed Hulk Hogan, right? That's what's going through my head. Like, they gave me this opportunity, they gave me the chance to run with the ball, and I just hurt the golden goose.
Hogan's theatrical performance continued as he was helped from the ring, his apparent agony serving to reinforce the narrative that The Undertaker had committed a grievous error. What followed was a scene that would be burned into The Undertaker's memory forever.
So I go into Vince's office there at Joe Louis. Hogan's laid on the floor.
Oh,
Got people all around him, and I'm like, holy shit. So I'm going over, like, check on him and, apologize and everything else. Like, as soon as I start to get over there, here come the EMTs.
For a young performer who prided himself on his safety record, this was nothing short of a nightmare scenario. The emotional impact was compounded by the presence of Shane McMahon, who was attempting to provide reassurance, but whose words seemed to fall on deaf ears.
So I go behind a wall with Shane. Me and Shane are behind the wall, and I'm having to, listen to, can you feel this? Can you do that? And then I hear somebody get my wife and kids on the phone. I'm like, so you can only imagine, right?
To The Undertaker, this wasn't just an injury. It felt like Hogan's career, maybe even his life, was on the line. Guilt aided him, even as others swore they'd seen nothing wrong. Meanwhile, other wrestlers who had observed the match were telling a very different story.
But so I'm walking down the hall, right? And I just think I've crippled Hulk Hogan. And, guys are coming up to me like, Mark, his head never touched. And I'm like, no, I can't hear it, right? I can't, none of that is registering with me.
The lack of immediate access to video replay technology in 1991 meant that The Undertaker would have to wait several days before he could see the footage for himself. Just 6 days after his championship victory, The Undertaker was scheduled to defend his title against Hogan at the hastily arranged This Tuesday in Texas pay-per-view. The young champion was led to believe that this quick turnaround was punishment for his supposed negligence, adding insult to injury. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. When The Undertaker finally had the opportunity to review the match footage, he discovered the shocking truth about what had actually transpired during that fateful tombstone piledriver.
So it took a few days before I actually got to see the footage. Mm-hmm. Sure enough, my head never touched.
Right.
Here you go, Tony.
The video evidence was irrefutable. Hogan's head had never come close to making contact with the steel chair or the mat. The tombstone piledriver had been executed flawlessly, with The Undertaker providing exactly the protection he had promised. The entire injury claim had been fabricated. Armed with this evidence, The Undertaker made the difficult decision to confront Hogan directly. This was no small matter.
So Terry shows up, and I pull him aside, and I was like, Terry. He goes, yeah, brother. I was like, I watched the footage back of that tombstone. He was like, yeah, brother, yeah. And I was like, your head never hit.
But rather than acknowledging the truth or apologizing for the deception, Hogan doubled down with an even more elaborate explanation.
He's like, well, brother, what it was you had me so tight that when we came down, I had nowhere to move. And that's what jammed my neck, because I couldn't move at all.
This explanation was not only insulting, but also completely contradicted the basic principles of wrestling safety.
At that point, then I was like, okay. Then I knew, I was like, okay. I kind of realized, okay, I know what you're all about. and that's all I needed.
The incident changed how The Undertaker dealt with people in wrestling. He learned fast that trust could be weaponized and that some veterans would lie or manipulate to protect their spot. For Hogan, though, this became the start of a pattern, faking injuries and bending stories to serve himself. That habit would follow him for years, souring relationships and cementing his controversial legacy. The betrayal of 1991 was just the first crack in a feud that would expose Hogan's dirty tactics and test the true character of both men, exposing the pattern of manipulation. Hogan's fake injury in 1991 wasn't a one-off. It exposed a pattern that had followed him for years. Once The Undertaker's story got out, other wrestlers shared their own run-ins with Hogan's manipulations, revealing a culture of control and deceit. In the 1980s and 1990s, veterans already held huge power, but Hogan, as the face of the company, took that influence to another level, and The Undertaker had just learned how dangerous that power could be. One of the most damaging revelations to emerge about Hogan's character involved his role in sabotaging early union efforts in wrestling. In 1986, when Jesse "the Body" Ventura attempted to organize wrestlers into a union to secure better working conditions and benefits, Hogan reportedly betrayed his fellow performers by informing Vince McMahon about the organizing efforts. This betrayal had far-reaching consequences that extended well beyond the immediate participants. The failure of unionization efforts in the 1980s meant that wrestlers continued to work without basic protections, including health insurance, retirement benefits, or job security. Ventura's reaction to Hogan's betrayal was one of lasting bitterness. In numerous interviews over the years, he has described Hogan's actions as a fundamental betrayal of solidarity, putting personal gain above the collective welfare of his fellow performers. This incident established a pattern of behavior that would be repeated throughout Hogan's career: the willingness to sacrifice others' interests to protect his own position. The political maneuvering extended beyond union issues into the day-to-day operations of wrestling companies. During his time in World Championship Wrestling, WCW, in the 1990s, Hogan negotiated a creative control clause in his contract that allowed him to alter match outcomes and storylines to his advantage. The consequences of this creative control became apparent in high-profile matches against stars like Sting and Bret Hart, where Hogan's refusal to lose cleanly damaged both the credibility of his opponents and the overall storytelling of WCW programming. The most notorious example occurred at Starrcade 1997, WCW's biggest event of the year, where Hogan's interference with the planned finish led to a confusing and unsatisfying conclusion that fans still debate today, but perhaps even more damaging than his. Behind-the-scenes politicking was Hogan's pattern of fabricating stories about his career and personal life. Wrestling fans and industry insiders have documented numerous instances where Hogan made claims that were later proven to be false. One of the most ridiculous examples involved Hogan's claim that he was offered the opportunity to become the bassist for the heavy metal band Metallica. This story was quickly debunked by Metallica members themselves, who confirmed that no such offer had ever been made. Another fabricated story involved Hogan's claim about the George Foreman grill. Hogan repeatedly told interviewers that he had been offered the endorsement deal that ultimately went to former heavyweight boxing champion George Foreman, supposedly missing out on millions of dollars because he was busy filming a movie. The inventor of the grill later contradicted this story, stating that Hogan had never been considered for the endorsement. These fabrications might seem harmless on the surface, but they revealed a deeper problem with Hogan's relationship with truth. If he was willing to lie about relatively minor matters for the sake of self-aggrandizement, what did that say about his trustworthiness in more serious situations, like the injury claim against The Undertaker? The pattern of deception extended into Hogan's wrestling performances as well. Multiple wrestlers have come forward over the years with stories of Hogan exaggerating or fabricating injuries to avoid putting over younger talent. The incident with The Undertaker was not unique. It was simply the most well-documented example of a behavior pattern that had been developing for years. Mick Foley, one of wrestling's most respected figures, has been particularly critical of Hogan's approach to the business. In various interviews, Foley has described Hogan's tendency to protect his image at the expense of others, calling him more of a stuntman than a true wrestler due to his reluctance to take risks or help elevate younger performers. The Undertaker's experience in 1991 served as a wake-up call for many in the wrestling industry. Other young wrestlers who had heard the story began to approach their interactions with established stars more cautiously, understanding that not every everyone could be trusted to act in good faith. This skepticism was justified by subsequent events. Throughout the 1990s, stories continued to emerge about Hogan's backstage behavior, including incidents where he allegedly used his influence to prevent other wrestlers from receiving significant pushes or opportunities. The pattern was consistent. When Hogan felt that another performer might threaten his position, he would find ways to undermine them. One particularly damaging incident involved Hogan's relationship with Macho Man Randy Savage. The two had formed one of wrestling's most popular partnerships as the Mega Powers in the late 1980s, but their real-life friendship soured over allegations involving Savage's wife, Miss Elizabeth. While the exact details of what transpired between them remain disputed, the breakdown of their relationship was so severe that it reportedly included physical altercations backstage. The personal animosity between Hogan and Savage extended far beyond their professional relationship. Sources close to both men have suggested that Hogan's jealousy over Savage's relationship with Elizabeth, combined with his tendency to prioritize his own interests above friendship, contributed to a rift that never fully healed. The two men barely spoke for years, and Savage reportedly requested that Hogan not be allowed to speak at his funeral when he passed away in 2011. Another wrestler who had significant issues with Hogan was Bret the Hitman Hart. Hart has been vocal in his criticism of Hogan's backstage politics, particularly regarding a planned championship match between them in 1993. According to Hart, Hogan refused to lose to him. The impact of Hogan's political maneuvering extended beyond individual wrestlers to affect entire wrestling promotions. During his tenure in WCW, his creative control and backstage influence contributed to the company's eventual downfall. The company's inability to move past Hogan and create new stars ultimately led to declining ratings and financial difficulties that culminated in WCW's sale to WE in 2001. One of the most controversial aspects of Hogan's WCW period involved his relationship with booking committee member Vince Russo. In 2000, Russo delivered a shoot promo on live television, calling Hogan a politician and accusing him of holding back the company. Meanwhile, The Undertaker's career trajectory during this same period provided a stark contrast to Hogan's approach. Rather than using his growing influence to protect his position at the expense of others, The Undertaker became known as a locker room leader who helped guide younger talent. The difference in their approaches became even more apparent when Hogan returned to WWE in 2002. By this time, The Undertaker had established himself as the company's conscience and unofficial locker room policeman, wielding significant influence behind the scenes. When the two men faced off again at Judgment Day 2002, the power dynamic had completely shifted. In an interview, The Undertaker reflected on how their relationship had evolved, saying,
"You know what? I always looked at it like from where I was at that point to where I was at the beginning, I was in a completely different spot. So I didn't have to carry a grudge. I treated him with the respect that I think that for what he did for the business, he deserved. So I treated him that way. I was not overly friendly, but I did, if he was in the building, I always made sure to say hello and engage him in conversation."
This measured approach demonstrated The Undertaker's maturity and professionalism, but it didn't mean he had forgotten the lessons learned from their 1991 encounter.
But, I've always, like I said, from that Tuesday in Texas, when I got that answer, I knew all I needed to know about him. And, and that's the way always, then, my radar was always up anytime that I had to, interact with him. But I dealt with him. I dealt in a professional manner with him.
The 2002 feud between the two men provided The Undertaker with an opportunity for symbolic redemption. Their match at Judgment Day saw The Undertaker decisively defeat Hogan to win the Undisputed Championship, effectively reversing the outcome of their controversial 1991 encounter. More importantly, there were no injury claims or backstage drama following this match. While Hogan drew backlash for politics and control, The Undertaker built his legendary WrestleMania streak and elevated new stars. Hogan chased headlines and controversy, while Undertaker earned respect as the locker room's conscience. Their later years made the split clearer. Hogan's TNA run was plagued by drama, while Undertaker's legacy only grew. Hogan's TNA run hurt the company as he pushed himself and his friends over younger stars and mocked fans who criticized him. In contrast, Undertaker's final years were defined by respect, capped by his WrestleMania 36 farewell and 2022 Hall of Fame induction. Hogan's legacy faded under controversy, while Undertaker's grew on professionalism and respect. When truth conquers all. But perhaps the most damaging revelation about Hogan's character was yet to come. In 2015, leaked audio recordings revealed Hogan making racist comments, including the use of racial slurs and expressions of racial prejudice. The recordings, which were part of an adult tape scandal, led to Hogan's immediate termination from WWE and his removal from the company's Hall of Fame. Hogan's racist comments destroyed his image, exposing a side that clashed with the inclusive persona he built and forcing fans and the industry to reevaluate his place in wrestling history. While Hogan was eventually reinstated to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018 after completing sensitivity training and making public apologies, the damage to his reputation was permanent. For The Undertaker, the revelation of Hogan's racist comments served as vindication of his long-held skepticism about Hogan's character. The man who had lied about an injury to protect his position was capable of much worse than simple professional misconduct. As their careers wound down, the split was clear. Hogan's legacy sank under controversy, while The Undertaker's grew on respect. What started with one lie exposed a career-long pattern: union busting, creative abuse, and fabrications, all for Hogan's gain. Yet the story didn't end there. The final chapter of their rivalry would unfold in a shocking way, forcing both men to face the ultimate consequences of decades of animosity. By the 2020s, both men were retired, but their paths couldn't have looked more different. The Undertaker shifted into podcasts and media work, mentoring talent and giving straight talk about the business. Hogan, meanwhile, tried to rebuild his image after the racist comments scandal, but mostly stirred attention with political takes and shaky ventures. In interviews, The Undertaker stayed professional and grounded. Hogan kept slipping into controversy. One of the most revealing moments in their ongoing saga occurred during WWE's transition to Netflix in January 2025. Hogan made what would be his final WWE appearance during the Netflix debut of Monday Night Raw, an event that was supposed to celebrate the company's new partnership, but instead became another chapter in the story of Hogan's declining reputation. The audience reaction to Hogan's appearance was shocking. Rather than the nostalgic cheers that might have been expected for a wrestling legend, Hogan was met with a chorus of boos from the Los Angeles crowd.
When I saw him, he was no-selling it and pushing his beer. I didn't see him. I wasn't backstage when he came.
Did you feel like giving him a hug afterwards?
No.
Here's Taker being a company man right
Right.
I was.
Did you feel bad for him? No.
Well, hey man, I got feelings. I got feelings for people. Like, sometimes in life, things come back.
This response encapsulated everything that The Undertaker had learned about Hogan's character over the course of more than 3 decades. The Los Angeles crowd's rejection of Hogan wasn't simply about his past racist comments, though those certainly played a role. It represented a broader repudiation of everything Hogan had come to represent: the backstage politics, the dishonesty, the self-serving behavior that had damaged so many careers and relationships throughout his time in the industry. The Undertaker provided additional context for the reaction, noting
Americana kind of deal, and then obviously, he gets caught on tape, saying some derogatory, racist things, and in this day and age where all of that is such a hot button deal. Like, I don't know what you expect. Like, people are gonna, they're gonna react, and they're not gonna react in a positive way.
But The Undertaker also acknowledged that the negative reaction went beyond just the racist comments scandal.
That's probably a good point. I mean, the fans, they have access now to everything, and they do, and then they get to hear people's interviews, and so they kind of feel like they're part of that locker room. And this was somebody that was, regardless of where he's at now, they kind of carry a grudge about it, because, he's come back before. Since all of the stuff with his daughter and all the racial stuff and all that, and he's came back and he's got positive reactions.
The modern era of wrestling, with podcasts and social media, made it impossible for wrestlers to hide behind their characters. The Undertaker's candid take on Hogan showed how much he'd grown since 1991, no longer silent or diplomatic, but openly calling out the man who once tried to derail his career. Even while acknowledging Hogan's historical importance, The Undertaker maintained his critical perspective. This nuanced position reflected The Undertaker's maturity and wisdom. He could separate Hogan's undeniable contributions to wrestling's mainstream popularity from his personal failings and professional misconduct. The theme of consequences for past actions became even more relevant when considering the trajectory of both men's lives and careers in 2025. While The Undertaker enjoyed universal respect and admiration for his contributions to wrestling, Hogan found himself increasingly isolated and criticized for his past behavior. The situation reached its ultimate conclusion on July 24, 2025, when Hulk Hogan passed away at age 71 from acute myocardial infarction. The circumstances surrounding his death were complicated by ongoing health issues related to a recent surgery that had severed his phrenic nerve, leading to breathing difficulties and a rapid decline in his overall condition. The wrestling world's reaction to Hogan's death was complex and nuanced, reflecting the complicated legacy he had left behind. While many performers and fans acknowledged his significant contributions to the industry, others struggled to reconcile their nostalgia for his character with their knowledge of his real-life behavior. The Undertaker's response to Hogan's passing was characteristically measured and professional. In a statement posted to social media, he wrote, "The wrestling world has lost a true legend. His contributions to our business are immeasurable, and for that I am appreciative. Thank you, Hulk Hogan." This tribute demonstrated the grace and dignity that had defined The Undertaker's approach to their relationship throughout his career. The funeral service on August 5, 2025, at Indian Rocks Baptist Church in Clearwater provided a final opportunity for the wrestling community to come together and reflect on Hogan's complex legacy. The Undertaker was among the many wrestling legends who attended, demonstrating his commitment to honoring the professional relationship, even while maintaining his personal reservations. The presence of so many wrestling figures at the funeral, including Vince McMahon, Triple H, Ric Flair, and many others, served as a testament to Hogan's impact on the industry. But the notable absence of his daughter, Brooke, who remained estranged from her father until his death, served as a reminder of the personal relationships that had been damaged by his actions. The final chapter of the Undertaker-Hogan saga ultimately became a story about the power of truth and authenticity over manipulation and deception. While Hogan had achieved tremendous mainstream success and cultural impact, his legacy was forever tainted by the choices he made in his personal and professional relationships. The Undertaker, on the other hand, had built a legacy based on integrity, professionalism, and genuine care for the wrestling industry. His willingness to speak truth to power, even when it was difficult or uncomfortable, had established him as one of the most respected figures in wrestling history. In the end, the story of The Undertaker and Hulk Hogan is not just about two wrestling legends and their complicated relationship. It's about the fundamental questions of character, integrity, and how we choose to treat others when we think no one is watching. The truth about their relationship, revealed through decades of careful observation and honest testimony, serves as a reminder that our actions have consequences, and that those consequences may not be apparent until many years later. The phrase, "sometimes in life things come back," that The Undertaker used to describe Hogan's reception in 2025 serves as the perfect epitaph for their relationship. Hogan's manipulation, dishonesty, and self-serving behavior had finally caught up with him, while The Undertaker's integrity and professionalism had established him as one of the most respected figures in wrestling history. The ultimate victory in their decades-long conflict belonged not to the man with the most championships or the biggest cultural impact, but to the man who had maintained his character and integrity throughout his career. In exposing Hogan's dirty secrets, The Undertaker had not destroyed Hogan's career. He had simply revealed the truth about who Hogan really was and allowed that truth to speak for itself. This final reckoning serves as both an ending and a beginning. The end of one of wrestling's most complex relationships, and the beginning of a new understanding about the importance of authenticity and integrity in professional sports entertainment. The legacy of their conflict will continue to influence how wrestlers, promoters, and fans think about the relationship between public personas and private character for generations to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.